Hi, everyone. Let me start with some numbers. So there are 2.1 billion people on this planet who live on less than $2 a day. Now, 1/3 of these people are actually children of pre-primary or primary school age. So that's 700 million children around the planet who live on less than $2 a day. Now for the number that really matters, the third percentile. That's the median performance of these 700 million children from low-income countries on international exams. That means that they perform worse than 97% of children from high-income countries. So why does that happen? That doesn't make sense. It's not because poor children from poor families can't learn. We all know that. So why is it happening? Well, the simple answer is it's because no one is actually teaching them. Now, I don't mean that there aren't schools for these 700 million children. For the vast majority, there are. But just because there's a school building in a neighborhood or a teacher's name listed on a roster, it doesn't actually mean that teaching is occurring, or more importantly, that learning is occurring. So in sub-Saharan Africa, 45% of instructional time is lost due to teacher absenteeism or neglect. So all this work that's happening around the world to build schools, to redevelop curriculum, to train teachers, it all misses the point. It misses the point because, to say it flippantly, they're not even showing up. So 5 years ago, my co-founder Shannon and I decided that an aggressive startup company that could figure out how to profitably deliver education at a high quality for less than $5 a month could radically disrupt the status quo in education for these 700 million children, ultimately creating what could be a billion-dollar new global education company. And yes, I use the word billion-dollar company and 700 million poorest children in the same sentence. Because that's who pays for this. That's who pays for the education. The same parent who earns for a family of 4 or 5 around $100 a month, they're the ones who pay for this education. Today, 55% of the poorest families in urban markets and emerging markets around the world are already sending their kids to private school. And that has nothing to do with Bridge International. These parents are currently spending up to 15 to 20% of their income on primary school. So right now, these 700 million children, this private schools for the poor, is a $51 billion a year market. But it's comprised exclusively of hundreds of thousands of low-cost private schools. Little shops in someone's home, a rented storefront. There are 75,000 of these low-cost private schools just in India. Private education for the poor, it's the biggest market, the biggest education market that no one's ever heard of. No one's even thought about it. It's one of the fastest growing markets in education in the world because of the demographics. So we set out to revolutionize this market, a market where parents are desperate for better education for their kids. In the last 4 months, we launched 51 new schools in Kenya. In the last 4 years, we've grown from 0 to 134 schools. This year, we're launching at a pace of 1 new academy every 3 days, and in the next 2 years, we'll be launching more than 1 every single day. In the last 4 months, we've doubled our enrollment, and we now educate almost 50,000 pupils. Within 10 days of opening up a new school in a brand new market in a new city, we have over 300 pupils enrolled. In January, in the beginning of the term, for every minute that we had our schools open, we enrolled 100 new pupils somewhere in Kenya. In the last 4 years, to cope with this demand, we've scaled the company. We've grown from 3 to 1,800 employees in Kenya, making us one of the fastest growing companies on the continent. As Samir mentioned, we're the largest private school chain in Africa. Today, we're the second largest retail chain of any kind, whether we're a bank or a dry cleaner. And the reason for this is the demand that comes from parents. Our pupils outperform their peers, as proven by international assessments, by over 200% in just 6 months. Today, we have 46,911 pupils in 134 schools. Those same 134 schools over the next 5 years will actually educate more than 100,000 pupils. And in the same 5-year period, we'll be building 2,000 and operating 2,000 additional schools to serve about 2 million kids around low-income countries in the world. When we open up a new school in a community, we're one of the least expensive schools in that community. We're cheaper than 65% of other schools available in the local market. In Kenya, in urban slums and poor towns across the country, that's the statistic. And we can run these schools profitably. At a steady state, the margins at a school are 40%, still making it affordable, $5 a child per month, and providing a world-class quality education. So how do we do it? Well, We take lessons that other large global service providers use, like McDonald's or Starbucks. We build for scale, we systematize, we standardize, we build in places systems of audit and accountability. We heavily leverage mobile technology to drive down the cost, to increase the transparency, and to create a data-driven feedback loop that goes across the entire chain. We call this vertically integrated platform, our Academy in a Box, and we've essentially had to re-engineer the entire value chain of education provision in order to do this. So it starts with figuring out, how do you figure out where to put a school? What's the ideal location for a school? So we're using smartphones and satellite imagery, low-flying aerial photography, and data analytics. We figure out what the population density is, the cost competitiveness, the school catchment area in previously unaccounted for dense slums in the poorest communities in the world. We then identify and lease hundreds of plots of land using teams of property scouts equipped with smartphone apps and monitored in real time with a real estate management system we've developed. We lease a plot of land every 3 days somewhere in the country. We then have to build classrooms. We build classrooms for $2,400 fully loaded. That includes the price of furniture, centralized infrastructure. We do this within 26 days on site. We build 70 concurrent construction sites at the same time, making us actually one of the largest construction companies in Kenya. To staff the academies, we interview thousands of individuals from communities all across the country. We give them a battery of 8 assessments. The results of those 8 assessments go into a centralized recruiting system that's backed up by correlations from past performance. And then we run a constant training program where we train 1,400 teachers at a time. We give them assessments every day, build a better profile of those teachers, and at the end of the program, hire the best candidates. A few months ago, we interviewed 10,000 candidates across 134 locations, brought 1,400 of them to training, and on a single day, hired 832 new teachers and academy managers to staff the academies in their community. So how do you make sure that 1,500 teachers across 1,500 classrooms across a country are delivering high-quality instruction every minute of every day? Well, we use a team of global curriculum experts to develop a word-for-word, action-by-action script for every second of every single day for every concept area and skill. And then in one of the largest deployments of teacher technology of this type, we distribute those scripts in real time to Android-based tablets running our custom application so that they can deliver that instruction to the pupils in the same device, collect assessment scores and attendance scores, bring all that data synced in real time to our back-end system to figure out what is it that is going well, what's not going well, to monitor for success and ensure that we have accountability across the network. To minimize corruption, especially in the environments in which we work, and ease audits, each of our business units is cashless. There's no money that exchanges hands. Our parents pay for their school fees either via bank deposit or mobile transaction. We have a real-time system on the back end to collect that information, process it through our proprietary billing database, and update in real time the academy manager's smartphone. So they have real-time billing information, even though there's not actually electricity at any of our schools. Payments to vendors also is cashless. Parents pay, the academy manager requests a payment to a local vendor. It's processed through our payment rules, automatically approved or rejected, and a payment kicked out from a centrally managed account, bypassing the cash through the school, but accounting for it and the academy manager being responsible for it in the system. Because our academies all implement a standardized curriculum, a standardized approach, we're able to collect research and data for our research and instructional teams in real time to figure out systemic improvements and individual successes and failures across our network. We released a new part of our assessment technology a couple weeks ago, and in 24 hours, we received more than a 250,000 test scores in 24 hours that then gets funneled to our curriculum team to figure out exact performance and then drive new scripts pushed directly to the tablets for our teachers. And so what all this creates is academic performance. That's why we're in this. So for tens of thousands of pupils across Kenya today, we have proven using international exams and third-party assessors that our pupils outperform their peers by up to 200% in core reading skills in just 6 months. And that's after baselining for incoming ability level. We only compare students who started at our school at the same level as students who start at other schools, government or private in the community. So if you can provide a single child with a high-quality education, you can potentially transform that child's life forever. If you can do this for hundreds of children in a single community, then the potential future possibilities of that community is a totally transformed experience. And if hundreds of communities are doing this across the country, then the possibilities for the nation is different. And our goal is if you can do this for multiple countries in multiple continents, then there's the possibility to change the world. Today, 50,000 pupils are benefiting from an education from Bridge International Academies, but we started this company with the idea and the systems for scale from day one. Our goal is to educate 10 million pupils from around the world. So today, we have 46,911 customers, which leaves us with 9,953,089 customers to go. Thank you.
Why don't you sit down, and then we'll get started.
I have to go see Bill at 9:55.
Okay, so a little glitch. He's got to go see Bill Gates in 10 minutes. So any questions for Jay? Yeah, Alexander.
Basically built an end-to-end educational system. Any takeaways from your experience doing this that you would, let's say someone put you in charge of the American educational system? What's
for $5?
Yeah, just for $5. What would be your top 3 things that you would try to do?
So I think one of the key things is not to reinvent the wheel. Part of the reason why we use a scripted instructional model for our teachers is because there is great research and there are experts at how to teach dividing fractions, for example. And it doesn't make sense to have 1,500, let alone 20,000 or 1 million teachers all reinventing the wheel and not being able to leverage that. So being able to specialize within an educational system where you can have folks who focus on, for example, teaching strategies, others on delivery, others on classroom management, that would be one big thing. The second is accountability. Right, so the stat that I put up there about sub-Saharan Africa, 45% of instructional time, the stat doesn't look the same in America, but in terms of inefficiencies, it's not that far off. I mean, we monitor every one of the teachers and staff in our system. We know what time they show up for school. We know what time they start every single lesson every day. We know what percentage of every lesson is finished every single day, and that feeds into a performance management system and a profit share that dictates their salary and their bonuses. And whether you can accomplish that in an American context in the exact same way, I doubt it, but in terms of making sure that the folks who are responsible for delivering education are rewarded and accountable for it, that would be the other big lesson.
Dheeraj.
Someone else mentioned death threats. I get them all the time. It's a very different context. The high levels of government are quite supportive of what we do. They recognize that they don't have the budget nor capacity to educate the vast majority of children that are under their care. The local politics are different, of course. Countless health inspectors coming and saying you must have 400 latrines per pupil in a classroom the size of this, auditorium. That's where the advantage of being a big company come in. So we have our own legal department, and even though we work in countries like Kenya, which are generally corrupt, they are also countries of laws. And so when an inspector comes up, they call our call center. They're transferred immediately to our legal team, who says, well, according to the 2007 Public Health Act, which section of the code are you citing? You usually get and then once they do that, we follow up on that, and we ensure that the government at all levels is actually complying with their own laws, and that generally helps us smooth over all those differences. Plus, since it's a cashless system, there's no section of the smartphone that says, please request a bribe. It gets rejected.
I might just add one comment that Jay forgot to mention. He's competing with free Kenyan government education, and parents are choosing to pay.
And free, to Vinod's point, free government education is not actually free in our context. The average government school actually costs between $2 and $8 per child per month in out-of-pocket fees, sanctioned or unsanctioned, which means that we are actually cost competitive with quote-unquote free, which is a nice place to be in the market.
Anne-Marie?
I have a question about the rapidly approaching monopolization then. So you're a big company, you've used intelligent analytics, you've used feedback, you've used educational experts and training of teachers. Now you'll be in a regime where you are the educational offer. Have you thought about what to teach?
So the first part of that is, yes, we are the biggest. We'll be the biggest chain of private schools in the world next year. However, there are hundreds of thousands of competitors to us. We are not the only option. We happen to be the biggest option, but there is enormous competition. And so we are specifically in line with our parents as customers because they can choose to take their kids elsewhere. We align ourselves to the national standards, but then supplement it with international best practices all over the world. But we have to align with the local standards within the country.
All right, last question, Atul.
I applaud you for doing what you're doing. Curious as to why you picked Kenya of all places.
So our goal is to expand globally. We're going to be in 1 to 2 new countries next year, and it always has been the idea that we would be a global education provider. So when we started out, technically 5 years ago, we said, what's the best first place to start? And so we took about 25 countries from Africa and emerging markets and took about 5 key economic and sort of business driving variables, things like population density, population size, and others. We made a spreadsheet. We had a weighted average formula. We sorted the spreadsheet. The first row in the spreadsheet said Kenya, and we got on a plane and moved to Kenya.
Great. Let's thank Jay. That was great.